For this module, we will continue analyzing public policy issues. In Chapter 5, we will look at public policy problems and policy alternatives. Then in Chapter 6, we will assess these different alternatives. There is also a reflective discussion due at the end of this module. Chapter 5 looks at policy problems and policy alternatives. It offers an overview of how to analyze public problems to gain an understanding of their causes and measure their magnitude and effects on society. Policy analysis takes place within a political context and can lead to competing problem diagnosis as well as varied recommendations based on the political situation. The problem definition stage of policy analysis can be influenced by politics. The way problems are framed affects the policy solutions that are developed. Based on their interpretations of data, policymakers construct public policy alternatives designed to alleviate these problems. Emphasis is placed on obtaining quantitative measures for problems, how to think clearly about the causes of problems, and how to set goals for their resolution, as well as how to find pertinent information through the use of library-based and internet sources of information. The chapter also expands on the many instruments of public policy that are available for governments to address problems. These vary from regulation to public education to research, the use of public policy typologies, and the policy design perspective. The text emphasizes the importance of thinking creatively about policy action through such methods as literature reviews, surveys, interviews, and policy activists and policymakers, consideration of analogies or parallel situations, as well as simply brainstorming. Key issues and questions to consider are: what exactly is involved in policy analysis? The Craft book talks about a rational, comprehensive approach, which again includes 5 steps: defining and analyzing the problem, constructing policy alternatives, developing evaluative criteria, assessing policy alternatives, and drawing conclusions. The next issue is: how do policymakers analyze these problems? They tend to define and measure, collect data, investigate causes, which is similar to the Bardach Eightfold Path. Different innovative ways to develop policy include creative thinking, to do nothing, look for quick surveys to gather quick information, review the literature, and follow a prescribed method such as the Eightfold Path, or the Rational Comprehensive Approach. Chapter 6 focuses on policy alternatives. It concludes the focus on the various methods of policy analysis by introducing a range of evaluative criteria commonly used to analyze policy, such as effectiveness, efficiency, and equity. Such criteria can be used to assess proposed policy options or to evaluate the merits of existing government programs, anything from education to energy conservation. The chapter offers many examples of how such criteria can be applied when evaluating policy action. Policymakers develop measures of policy outcomes, assess the outcomes relative to costs, and weigh the fairness of policies while considering ethics and moral values of policy alternatives. The chapter reviews each of the major methods of policy analysis, including cost-benefit analysis and risk assessments, as well as forecasting, impact assessments, and ethical analysis. Their purpose is twofold. First, to convey basic information about these methods, including their strengths and limitations, as well as to show how they can be used in the study of public policy. While analyzing information through these methods is essential, we also need to appreciate how politics and values affect the conduct of policy analysts and how analysis can be used to empower citizens and motivate them to participate in the public policy process. The issues and questions here focus on how policymakers use various criteria to evaluate the various alternatives. Now, how do you make important decisions? You, of course, develop standards or criteria to make comparisons and apply the same criteria to all alternatives. Which evaluative criteria are typically used? They generally focus on effectiveness, which is did the policy work, or do alternatives achieve the outcome goal, and efficiency, and that relates to cost in achieving the best policy outcome at the lowest cost. Various methods are applied by policy analysts to research the likely impact of alternatives. They include economic measures such as cost-benefit analysis, cost-effective analysis, and risk assessment, as well as decision analysis, which involves forecasting outcomes based on alternative policies and assessing the impact of policy choices. There are also issues with ethics, which focus on liberty, equity, and fairness.